Working on Wild Miami was awesome. There's just not a lot of places that you can go and in a single shoot film animals from almost every continent. Totally unique from any other wildlife filmmaking I've done before.
We often travel to really exotic places to find the animals that we film, but literally all of the action for this film happened right in the city where I live, and in many cases within a block or less of my house.
The first time I came to Miami was in 2007 to go to grad school to study biology. During that time, I met Neil.
I first came to Miami as a biologist, studying a couple of the non-native lizard species that have made a home here in Miami.
It was in a lot of ways a place where our relationship as sort of friends and then eventually as filmmaking business partners started.
I came here not really knowing anything about Miami, and I was immediately blown away by how abundant and how diverse the wildlife was here. You can still see traces of the original wild Miami in the city of Miami today. There are still animals like the raccoons and the land crabs that have been here for many thousands of years.
Coming as a biologist, you kind of are almost hit in the face by how much diversity there is here. Everywhere you look, there's all sorts of animals. When you start looking a little bit closer, you start noticing that almost every animal that you see comes from different parts of the world.
A lot of the animals that are the most common, they come from South America, Central America, the Caribbean, even Africa and Southeast Asia.
This is an entire ecosystem built from plants and animals that we've brought from other parts of the world. I think at first that sort of is unsettling and you don't like it as a biologist, but over time, I feel like I've come to appreciate that what's happening here in Miami is something that is just totally unique. We're in the middle of a great experiment.
After I finished grad school and I was done studying the lizards in Miami, I moved to Colorado. I became a wildlife filmmaker and didn't think all that much about Miami until 2015 when my wife got a job at the University of Miami and we moved back here. Once I came back here and started looking at this place where I now lived through the eyes of a wildlife filmmaker, I thought, my gosh, there are so many cool stories to tell here. We worked on a film a few years ago, and it's all about these lizards called anoles. There are many species of anoles in Miami, and so we did a lot of filming in Miami. And it was partly doing that project and really realizing that these lizards are actually adapting, they're evolving to be better at living in cities, that really made me think of the city environment as another habitat.
It's a new kind of ecosystem and one that is becoming more prevalent around the globe. Paying attention to that is really important. Not a lot of films, especially wildlife films, focus on those kinds of stories, and I think that's one of the things that makes Wild Miami really unique.
One of the big ways that this is a different sort of wildlife film is that often wildlife films are telling the story of a place that has been functioning as an ecosystem for a really long time. Miami is not like that, right? By and large, this is an ecosystem of unintended consequences. We've brought animals from all over the world. Most of them have never interacted with one another before. They've never lived in this place before. In a very real sense, they're all still sorting it out.
We covered a huge range of different kinds of animals in this film. We filmed everything from birds that nest in high voltage lines to animals that live in the canals to tiny mosquitoes. And there are just so many biting insects in Miami. And because there were so many biting insects in Miami, Neil and I knew that we had to tell the story. We actually went out and filmed Neil getting bit by mosquitoes in order to get some macro shots of it happening, and he braved a very intense evening exposing his arms to many, many, many mosquitoes.
I think we probably used over a dozen different cameras and certainly 15 to 20 different lenses and various kinds of camera support and tools to move the camera in different ways. Got something called a Trexo Moco car.
Right here, we basically got this remote control vehicle, the Moco car, connected to a gimbal on a cloud mount with an A7S over here. So Neil will drive the remote control vehicle. One of us will control the camera. I've got forced mobile on, so anywhere I turn, the gimbal on the camera turns with me.
It allowed us to get the camera right in among the peacocks and get these really immersive shots that I think give a unique perspective. Some of the action we were filming required super slow motion. We were able to use that on several key sequences in this film to capture slow-mo way beyond what we could do with any of our other cameras. I've got the Kronos 2.1 camera here. It shoots 1,000 frames per second in full HD, waiting for some iguanas on the opposite bank of this canal to dive into the water, hoping to have the camera pointed in the right place when they do it. One of the things about shooting with these high-speed cameras is that you're gonna have to be shooting in full sun. Lucky for us, that's exactly when the iguanas are the most active. We took every opportunity we had to fly our drones in every part of the city, from downtown way out into the suburbs. When you get up in the sky, it almost looks like unbroken jungle. We also used FPV, or first-person view aerials. As the drone banks and swoops, you get that view in the camera.
We shot to make it sort of feel like you're flying through the ecosystem. There were a lot of filmmaking firsts for me in this project. First time I've ever had to throw my camera in the trash to film wildlife. Shooting wildlife in cities comes with a bunch of different challenges. Shooting wildlife in Miami comes with even more challenges. You're getting destroyed by bugs, you're sweating nonstop, your batteries aren't working because of the heat. Also, just trying to follow the stories of wildlife that are spending most of their life on private property creates a ton of challenges.
In an urban environment, it's a patchwork of different kinds of ownership. So everywhere you go, you need to get permission from the landowner. You know, I can't just hop over the fence into my neighbor's backyard if I want to film the peacocks there.
You get a lot of weird looks. You know, people are like, why do you have those big lenses out? What are you guys shooting here? During this project, at least 2 people have stopped Neil while he's shooting a wildlife film to see whether he's willing to shoot their music video. When you tell them that you're shooting a wildlife film, it's almost like they can't believe that you'd film a wildlife film here in Miami. And I think that actually really excited Neil and I. I think the fact that so few of the people who we've met here in Miami know the unique history of a lot of the animals that are just kind of every day in their lives means that hopefully this film will reach a lot of people and help people understand the history of this place. I have conflicting feelings about how much diversity you have here. I mean, on the one hand, all the invasive species and exotic species that have been brought to Miami have created really huge amounts of ecological damage, and they're not good for native species. On the other hand, I don't blame the animals. I don't think that they're the antagonists here. I think that we are. We're the ones who have brought them here, and they're just trying to do what they do. They're trying to survive. I think as an evolutionary biologist who sort of appreciates the struggle for life, I find it remarkable. And then as a conservation biologist, as a conservationist, I also sort of feel sad about it. At the very least, it's hugely interesting, and it's never happened before in the history of life on Earth, what's happening right now here in Miami.
One thing that became really clear to us as we worked on this film is that there are very few rules governing what people can bring in here, as well as a strong culture of exotic animal ownership. The more colorful, the more exotic, the better. They're status symbols. And then people get bored of these animals, or these animals grow too big and people can't take care of them anymore, and so they release them. And it's not the right thing to do. That's how a lot of ecological problems start.
Most people who care about conservation might feel like a place like Miami is a lost cause. Right? It's been completely transformed. We've taken out the mangrove, we've replaced them with buildings and concrete. And I think that if all you care about is native diversity, I think, yeah, it's a lost cause. But I think what at least I've realized is that when we change the environment, the animals and plants that live here, they change with it. It's not going to be ever what it was before, you know, the massive development that happened over the last century. But it is an extremely unique place, and I think it's valuable. I think it has value.
I hope people who watch Wild Miami take away that there's wildlife everywhere, in part because wild animals have to adapt to live here. Those are really cool stories to watch unfold. Definitely given me a renewed appreciation for just how unique this place is, how lucky I am to live here.
I think that even if you're a Miami local and you've lived in this place your entire life, I think our film will show you something that you've never seen before. I hope that watching it not only makes you laugh and teaches you something about a city that you thought you knew, but it also makes you want to go out and try to find out more about your wild neighbors.